Hello, and welcome to Quality Time, the podcast made just for Nebraska's early childhood providers who are growing every day through Step Up to Quality. I'm your host, Laura Cady. Whether you're tuning in during snack time, cleanup, or your drive home, we're so glad you're here. Each episode, we shine a spotlight on the meaningful work happening in early childhood programs across Nebraska. Because quality isn't built alone, it's built together. This season, we're focusing on early literacy, a cornerstone of high-quality early childhood education and care. Today, we're diving into how early literacy takes shape in high-quality programs and how tools like the environmental rating scales and CLASS support that journey. I am joined by three amazing guests. We have Erica Timperley, Sarah Voss, and Colleen Schmidt, each bringing unique perspectives from their work with Step Up to Quality. All right, welcome to Quality Time. Erica, Sarah, and Colleen, I am so thrilled to have you here today.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Hello. Hi.
Okay, well, I have to say, it is an honor to have Colleen Schmidt back to the mic. This time as a guest. So Quality Time was truly Colleen's creative baby. She was the host for this podcast for its first 3 seasons. So we're very excited to have you back today. And I know that our listeners are just as excited to hear your voice again. All right.
Let's hear my weird voice.
Let's start with a quick round of introductions. So can each of you tell us a little bit about your background and your current role?
Sure. So I'll start. Hi, listeners. It's me again. You're stuck with me. I'm so thankful that you are in the hands of Laura. She's an amazing hostess, and I'm thrilled to be here. I'm wearing a few different hats right now. I am currently working part-time for Step Up to Quality as a trainer and an observer for the CLASS tool. But I also am now a part-time early childhood SPED coordinator for ESU3, where I'm supporting Region 2 public preschool. And that's been really fun and different. And then I am a part-time sassafras. That hasn't changed. Those are kind of my hats.
Oh, it's nice to have you back. And as always, you are doing a little bit of a lot or a lot of bit of all sorts. You're always doing so many different things. So we're excited to have you back. Thank you, Colleen. All right, Erica.
Yes. Hi. Thank you, Laura. I'm really happy to be here. I'm Erica Timperley, and I've had one role or another with NDE for probably the last 10 years, mostly working with Step Up to Quality. So I've done some coaching with Step Up to Quality. I've done a whole lot of observations. And then my current role the last 5 years has been the anchor for the ERS tools. And I know we'll talk about those today. Those are the environmental rating tools. So you have the ERS, which is preschool center-based, the ERS, which is infant and toddler center-based, and then the FICRs, which is our home-based version of the ERS tools. So I'm really happy to be here today and talk about literacy.
We're going to learn a lot with you, Erica. Thank you for being here. All right. And last but not least, Sarah.
Yeah, hello. My name is Sarah Voss. I have a degree in elementary education and early childhood development. I started my career as a first grade teacher and then eventually moved into early childhood administration. I was an early childhood administrator for about 20 years. I'm also a Step Up to Quality coach and a trainer, and I'm an observer with the CLASS tool. I'm reliable in all ages of the CLASS tool. So I'm excited to be here and share today.
Sarah, thank you so much. I can connect. First grade teacher. That's kind of where I started as well. So takes one to know one. It's a fun age. Okay. Well, thank you so much. It's so wonderful to have all of you here. Let's jump right in. So environmental rating scales. Erica, you mentioned a little bit about that. So how do the ERS tools support quality literacy practices in early childhood classrooms?
So all 3 of the tools, whether it's the ERS or the ERS or the FICRs, all have a language and literacy subscale. So it is part of that score. It's building that capacity within teachers and looking at that. The overall goal from the ERS tools is to build a love of books with children. So they're looking for what are the programs doing? What are the teachers doing that are really connecting books and those literacy moments and giving kids the feeling of positive and love and, that touch, having a book read in a teacher's lap, having that one-on-one experience, and really focusing on making sure that we're developing children into little people that love to read books. So as part of those ERS tools, we're looking at the number of books that are accessible to the children. Are the books appropriate for the age levels that are going to be using them? And then can children access the books? Can they use them and reach them and actually interact with them? So we're looking at all those pieces and how the teachers and children interact with the books. And we're looking for evidence that the teachers are helping build that love of literacy, the love of books.
That is fantastic. And it makes me think, I've spent a lot of time in different educators throughout the city. And I notice that a lot, the bookshelves that are at eye level with the kiddos, and they can reach them and they can touch them. And a lot of them are board books. Some of them are not. Maybe they're ripped. Maybe they're, they have to be cleaned every day. But the idea is that they are accessible, and that is so important. So thank you for sharing a little bit about that. And are there ways that literacy is also embedded in other parts of the ERS tool? I believe the language and literacy subskills.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have them in the language and literacy subskills, which feels the most obvious, right? Because you're thinking literacy, you're going to look at the books. But beyond that, you think about the types of books that can be in programs, and they can teach so much, and they can show up in other parts of the scale as well. So if a teacher reads a book that has realistic animals in it, that's going to show up in the book item as well as nature and science. If you're looking at books with math and counting, or books that focus on diversity in the world, those interactions are going to show up in other pieces of the tool. So, I would encourage everybody to make sure you have a wide selection of books, because then in terms of building your ERS score, you're going to be able to put into a lot of areas. But also, what a great way to introduce kids to just these fantastic new ideas, because you can bring all sorts of different learning into those book interactions.
Oh, those are great ideas. How do you see the ERS influencing the way educators organize their literacy materials and reading areas for children?
If I were to make a recommendation, I would definitely try to get people to have their books organized into an interest center, where the main goal is this is where children can go, they can read. It's separate from those louder areas like your dramatic play and your blocks. It's more isolated, so it's a quieter space. They probably need furniture to have the books organized, and then also furniture for children to comfortably use the books. I read all the time. I'm an avid reader, and I have a spot on my couch that I curl up and read, because that's where we feel comfortable and happy. We're not sitting on the hard floor trying to look at our books, and we need to make sure that we're providing that for the children in the classroom as well.
Those are all very, very good ideas. So thank you so much, Erica. So now let's move on. We're going to move on to class. And Colleen, do you mind sharing a bit about how does the class tool support quality literacy practices, especially through teacher-child interactions?
Yeah. So first, I just want to say I love hearing Erica talk about ERS. And when we're thinking about supporting providers and step up to quality, we want to make sure that everyone understands that you don't want to join one team or the other. It's not class versus ERS. When we're talking about these research-based tools to support quality interactions for kiddos, we need both. It's not like, well, I know that our program is only focusing on class. That's our observation that we're choosing for our rating. So we don't care if we have furniture for our books in the Reading Interest Center, or we don't care how many books we're providing to kids, or the quality of the books, or if they're in good condition. But we really have to stop kind of putting mom versus dad. And we want to look through the lens of what's best for our kids. So the suggestions that are made in the ERS tools are best practice. And really, when I think about how does the class tool support early literacy, it supports it alongside with the ERS. Like, step one is we have to have books that are accessible for our kids. Step two, and really what the class tool is focused on, are the interactions and the ways that we are intentionally supporting early literacy with infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. So some of the things that in my current role at ESU3 that I've really been learning more about and focusing on are the elements of the science of reading. That's a hot topic in Nebraska right now. We're on a big literacy push, nationwide too, but boy, we're really doubling down here in Nebraska on literacy, and I think it's great. So when I think about two of those elements, vocabulary is a part of research-based practices that we know helps young children become readers. And the CLASS tool from infancy starts to encourage adults to focus on vocabulary, types of words we're using. If I'm interacting in the toddler classroom and I use a word like, I always use the example metamorphosis, unless if I make that make sense for a toddler, that's not a word that they're going to retain, but it's that intentional interaction where I'm going to try and support vocabulary through labeling, through making big $5 words make sense for kids, for exposing them to a variety of words throughout the day. And then when we think about the science of reading and comprehension, I think the CLASS tool is so intentional about observing the interactions with questions. Like embedded throughout the tool, they're looking for you to have these back and forth exchanges that focus on questions and providing opportunities for children to make sense of the world around them, either through just conversations and language support, but also through literacy. Really thinking about a tip or trick I give providers is if you are reading a book, no matter what age you're working with, really plan out those open-ended questions that you're going to ask before you even read that book. I always would just put them on a sticky note on the back of my book. I'm old school, but it's little things like that. It doesn't have to be scary. I know when we hear science of reading, that can feel intimidating, but infant and toddler teachers are doing science of reading when they are supporting vocabulary, comprehension, a love of reading. And I do believe that the CLASS tool helps to kind of push those interactions and that envelope in an intentional way.
Well, I'm learning a lot of connections. What I'm hearing is it's not CLASS versus ERS. We are better together. We complement each other. But also when thinking about science of reading, keeping it simple and really focusing on that bit of intention with the vocabulary, that intention with open-ended questions, just intentional interactions. Oh, so good. Thank you. So how can you share as well how the CLASS tool helps educators strengthen those interactions that are supporting children's language and literacy development?
I think it just makes you become more intentional about it. Like it just really, like the planning piece of it. And then, there are those teachable moments where I have no idea what a toddler is going to say or do. That's why it's fun being with a toddler. Like that's not in my plan book. And I just have to be kind of in the moment. If they do respond, let's say we're reading a book together and I have a 2-year-old on my lap and they point to a picture of a dog. And I say, oh, dog, that's right, doggy, woof, woof. Do you have a dog at your house? Mommy says that you have a wiener dog. A wiener dog is long. Like, that's a weird example. That just came out.
Totally.
But things like that. Like, I think it gives you the opportunity to both plan for intentional interactions and also capitalize on those teachable moments.
And toddlers will keep you on your toes.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, great. Thank you, Colleen. Okay, Sarah, I would love to hear from you as a coach. What kinds of changes have you seen programs make to their daily schedule or teaching strategies based on feedback from ERS or CLASS?
Yeah, I love how Colleen mentioned that it's not either or, that both of these tools are so important to be used in early childhood programs. When I think of the ERS tool, I think that teachers have used that to be more intentional about what materials they provide in their literacy centers. They're making sure they have fiction books and nonfiction books. They're going to make sure they have a variety of topics and examples of books for the kids to read from. And then, like Erica said, just incorporating those books throughout their centers. It's not just at your book center. I've seen a lot of teachers put science books at their science center or books about building at their building centers, and just using those books throughout the classroom. And then even in dramatic play, putting environmental print like menus or encouraging kids to read labels of, bottles of, different foods and things that they have at their kitchen center. When I think about the class tool, I've really seen providers offer more opportunities for children to explore and following their leads. For example, I was in one program where they were talking about the Three Little Pigs, and the teacher had put at the block center, she put blocks that look like bricks, and then straw and sticks for the kids to build with. And the kids would retell the story and became really engaged with retelling the story. They also had at their dramatic play center, they had costumes and things. And so the kids could act out the story. And it was nice to see how that theme was incorporated throughout all of their centers. And they really had a deeper understanding of the story by playing that way. I've also watched providers use a lot of descriptive language when engaging with children, because as a part of literacy, we have to focus on that building language. So it's important for adults to describe what's happening in the classroom or in their environment so they can connect those actions with those words. For example, if you're coloring with a kid, you might say, I'm coloring with a red crayon. You're using a purple crayon to make circles. And just describing what you're doing, they can put those words, connect those words with what's happening in the room.
Those were great examples. And I think a lot about, I was a dual language teacher. I taught a lot of kiddos learning in their second language. So either learning English as a second language or learning Spanish as their second language. And so I just think a lot that descriptive language is so important, but also the play and the joy and all of that you're describing, it really supports as well our kiddos who are learning in their second language. So I appreciate all those ideas. And so I would like to follow up with one more question, Sarah. So can you share an example of a literacy-focused strategy or a change that came directly from working with Step Up to Quality?
Yeah, well, just over the years, I've seen how that pendulum has swung back to more play-based learning and away from that rote learning and drill and practice and flashcards. Teachers are more aware of how literacy is impacted in all levels of play. So when a child's doing dramatic play, they're practicing making up stories and retelling stories. When they're playing with Play-Doh or stringing beads onto a string, they're working on those fine motor skills that are going to eventually help them learn how to hold a pencil and become able to write. All those things are important parts of developing readers and writers.
Great. Okay, this is for anyone who's interested in answering. So how have you helped programs use either the ERS or CLASS tools specifically to strengthen literacy outcomes?
I have a couple thoughts on this. One thing that comes to my mind right away is group book readings. And I'm not here to bash on group times, but I do just think people need to think it through when you're reading a book to like a group of toddlers, for example, and they get up and wander off because, developmentally, that's where they are. It's hard for them to sit through an entire book time. And I've seen it multiple times where teacher 1 is reading, teacher 2 goes and grabs the wanderer, brings him back to the group time, and now the child's crying and sitting in teacher 2's lap. And I don't think that's meeting our end goal of building that love of literacy with children. So sometimes I think we need to step back and think, what are our interactions with books looking like? And is that meeting the intent that we want these children to learn to love their interactions with books, to see them in a positive way? And so I've seen some great book readings, group book readings happen, but that seems to be a time where it gets really stressful for the teachers and really stressful for the students and the children, versus when children are freely playing and they have those one-on-one readings or small groups of children. And then that really reminds me of those times where I read to my kids in the evening. My kids valued that time. I read to my son until he was in 7th grade. We were still doing read alouds because he preferred me to read it to him than him to read it. And that was a valuable time. It was an emotional connection time. And that's what we want to see those reading times happening. And I do have one other thought on this too. I'll say it briefly, but another thing to think about when we're trying to build that love of learning, that comfort, that, the positive thoughts to go alongside with books, right? Is when programs have this library area set up, and then the only time it's used is as a punishment area. And it makes me so sad. So the only time that children are offered to go there, or the teacher says, "Do you want to look at a book?" is when it's in a punitive manner. You're not listening. You need to go to the library. You need to go calm down, go sit in the library. And again, then whether it's that child or other children that are hearing this, they're associating that library with negativity. And so that's just not what we want to see happening. We want to see those great interactions happening around books, and we want children to be drawn to those areas and want to spend time in those areas because it's a positive experience for them.
That's great. Yeah, you got me thinking, because I think that that's true. Sometimes there's a cozy corner or there's the library and whatnot. Sometimes it's because of space, who knows? But I think just being more intentional about that being a positive association. This is where you get to go to. We have straw and the bricks, and we're going to build, making it a really a positive place to visit and getting that started sooner than later. So thank you so much. What about you, Colleen?
I love that Erica brought up group time, especially with Todd's. Something that it wasn't necessarily me helping a program with, but something I saw during an observation during group time for a group read aloud that I was like, wow, these providers are geniuses. They had younger preschoolers, so like 3-year-olds, so pretty young. And they invited them all over to the rug for a read aloud. And instead of battling behaviors and kids getting bored during that time, they passed out a book to every child. And then the teacher did her read aloud. And the ones who needed to have something to fidget with or flip or, needed to be engaged in a different way had that to them, and it was accessible. And the ones who were really enthralled in what teacher was reading and doing were like hooked into her and just basically holding that book in their lap. And it was one of those aha moments for me where I was like, wow, that's how you do that. Like, that's how you give them autonomy, or in the class tool, they call it a regard for child perspective, where you're giving them some other form of choice, but you're also still sticking with your why, like what Erica's saying, like really focusing on like, what's the point of read aloud time? Like, am I just doing it to do it because my coach said I need to have this group time? Or am I doing it to instill a love of learning and still give kids some freedom and choice? It just was a really cool thing that recently I saw that I was like, yep, that's exactly how you accomplish that goal. So I think our providers are amazing. Like, I learned more from doing observations than I probably could give for support. Like, I just get so many good ideas from being able to watch everyone across the entire state in all age levels. So that was a recent example that I had.
Thank you.
Colleen, along those lines, I was thinking of the class tool and just really following the kids' leads when we're doing a read aloud. If the kids are bored, it's perfectly okay to kind of skip ahead or make up your own story and finish the book up. We don't always need to read the books word for word and complete a whole book. It's perfectly okay to change what you're doing, move on, read a different book, just following their leads on that.
That's such a good example. And then I think about infants too, like when you're reading a book to a baby wants to flip ahead. Like, that's okay. Can I flip ahead and meet baby where they are on that page and still just engage them but yeah, Sarah, you're right. Like, it's following that lead without losing the purpose of what you're doing. I agree.
Great. Sarah, how have coaching services through Step Up to Quality impacted early literacy in the programs that you support?
I think a lot of times it's just about educating providers about what's developmentally appropriate for young learners. Providers have a lot of pressure to get kids, quote unquote, ready for kindergarten. And I think we just need to remind providers and teachers that they don't need to focus on that rote learning and flashcards. That their job is to just encourage that love of learning first and foremost. And they can focus on things like building vocabulary and introducing and defining new words by labeling materials and actions. They can play and sing songs and do funny rhymes with kids, and that's going to build all those early literacy skills. And of course, doing lots of read alouds, both to a whole group and then just sitting in your lap. And all those things are going to build that foundation for literacy.
Perfect. Oh, we have a question from one of our Step Up to Quality listeners. We have a question from Liz, and she's asking, if you could change one thing about how society approaches early literacy, what would it be?
Well, I'll answer Liz's question. Good question, Liz. I like this one. I have a few things that I would say, gosh, I wish we could change some ideas. To piggyback off of what Sarah is saying, that's something I wish we could change for birth through 5 to not have to feel this pressure of I must prepare them for kindergarten. And also for kindergarten to not have to feel this pressure of I must prepare for first grade. And for first grade, to not feel that pressure. And it goes on, right? Like, again, I think collectively we need to remember what our why is with supporting literacy and this big push that we're on, and the focus that we as a state are collaborating together to help reach a really amazing goal. I think our intention is good. I really hope we stay grounded in remembering that a love of literacy is really what is going to make good readers. And readers at grade level must first love reading. And that starts with infancy. It starts with simple things, with read alouds, with sitting on my lap. Collectively, I wish as a society, we could all come together and get grounded again on the why and supporting early literacy through the lens of loving literacy.
Before we wrap up, is there anything we didn't touch on that you think providers should hear, whether about early literacy or your experiences supporting programs through Step Up to Quality?
I think it's really important that providers hear it from us today and continually hear it all the time, that we see you. We see the hard work you're doing. We see the effort going into today's literacy, but it could be any, topic that we're talking about happening in the classroom. We see you're doing enough. You're doing such hard work. And all of us here are observers. Sarah, Colleen, myself, we go into a variety of programs, whether it's homes or centers that are really large, centers that are really small, centers in Omaha, centers in Chadron. We are all over Nebraska seeing it all. And the consistent thing we see is the love that these teachers and providers have for children and the hard work that they're doing. So I really think it's important to, end on the note or include that we see you when you have an observation done. We're never there to judge you. And often we're in awe of you. No matter what your score ends up being, we're in awe because you're working so hard and doing fantastic work for early childhood and all these children that are in Nebraska. So we're thankful for our providers for sure.
Thank you, Erica. Well, we're almost done. Before we end, I always love to end with the same question. So it's one that brings us back to why, as Colleen said, why early literacy matters so much. So I would love to know, do any of you have a favorite children's book or a read aloud moment that's really stayed with you and reminds you of the power of language and connection?
When I think about read alouds, I always think about my own kids who are now in college and grown. But thinking about those Sandra Boynton books, the Moo Ba La La La, and I just have a memory of my oldest son, the Moo Ba La 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 book and his no part. He loved to say that was one of his first words, and so just reminiscing about those times where you're reading with kids on your lap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For me, I've started a personal campaign in every training that I do. So if you come to my training, you'll probably hear this, that I want to see the Pete the Cat books brought back in force because I love those books. I think I'm personally a really like sing-songy person in my day-to-day life. I tend to I have a terrible singing voice, but I just sing a lot. I make up random songs. And I love how those Pete the Cat books, they're so sing-songy, they're so catchy. I think it's such a great way to build literacy, and kids love them. And I see them here and there, but bring them back. Where did they go? I used to see them all the time, and I loved the button book. You would talk about the numbers, and you're doing the counting. I just think they're fantastic. So bring back Pete the Cat.
Like, bring Pete back. Bring Pete. I'm a cat lady, so I'm full on. Yes, we need more Pete the Cat, more songs.
I love Pete the Cat too, Erica. So I'm on your crusade. I'll join your mission on that. But she's right. Like it's the sing-song part. And Sarah, you stole mine. Like my favorite memory is also with reading Sandra Boynton books with my kids. I mean, I can recite the Belly Button book without this tiny hippopotamus has something small to say. Like I can still do it. My kids are big. And it's just those memories. And for anyone who's listening who is a parent of a young child, I want to acknowledge that bedtime is hard. Reading every night can feel really tedious and hard. But what we want to remember again is that why and that love of literacy. And there's all sorts of research that supports that if we read them, read alouds when they are itty bitty babies up through age 5, the likelihood of them being good, strong readers when they reach 3rd grade is greater. So if I know that, which I did, I would power through the Belly Button book the 852nd time. I knew it was helping them, but I could talk about favorite books all day. I love that question, Laura.
Oh, well, thank you, Erica. Thank you, Colleen. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your expertise and also your heart and your passion for this work. It's clear now, I learned so much that these tools, ERS, CLASS, and coaching are not just about assessments and that they're so important together and stronger together. They're about building powerful, intentional literacy practices that make a real difference for children and families. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in to Quality Time. We hope today's episode sparked new ideas and reminded you of the powerful impact that you're making, especially through language, literacy, and connection. Be sure to join us next time as we continue celebrating Nebraska's amazing early childhood professionals who are stepping up to quality every day. Until then, bye-bye.